Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Marvel Icon's Nightcrawler. Last week, in the middle of his seminarian training, Kurt Wagner found himself investigating a human trafficking ring, one with national reach, and run by a ruthless crook named Oleg. With uncertainty plaguing his mind, the X-Man must keep his faith as he improvises his way to trying to end this sinful business. Issue 3's cover has Kurt seeming like he's in pain, crouched, his head down, and clutching a chain. Another reason he doesn't like working the convention circuit. Perhaps it's symbolic of sympathetic torment he's feeling toward those shackled under modern slavery, or all these covers are based on religious artworks I'm not familiar with. In any event, we begin in the room of a brothel, as a man is getting dressed and the woman he was with, Beata, observing this familiar scene, partly for safety's sake, and even helps him with his cuffs, not unlike how the man's wife likely did earlier that day. But he'd never say to his wife the things he said to Beata in their tryst. Mostly because his wife is sick of hearing about the hidden symbolism in Minions 2. She can tell Nightcrawler is outside her window, not having seen anything, not that the woman cares, and he asks if she's okay. Beata is the same as when the two met a few weeks back, and since she doesn't think anything changes, she'll be the same once he's gone. This would indicate Kurt's been working this case for several weeks. Otherwise, they would have had to have met under completely unrelated circumstances.
And that would be downright nutty.
Skipping a lecture, he clarifies that if she's happy with this life, getting exactly what she wants, he can be gonzo. But if that isn't the case, he wants to help her and the other prostitutes. If ever you needed help moving a couch, a teleporter is probably one of the best options you can get. She insists she wants nothing, and he can't help her. She elaborates on her past in Russia, falling in love with a soldier named Zhenya, running away into the country with dreams of starting a simple farm life together. Sadly, he was conscripted to fight in the war in Chechnya, and she never saw him again. A friend of theirs had visited her, claiming to have news about Zhenya, then proceeded to sexually assault Beata, after which, claiming her boyfriend was dead. This alleged friend then hit her, and next thing she knew, she's selling her body in the U.S. Yeesh. That's so grim I'm afraid the next page is going to take us all the way back to the first chapter of City of Crime. You know, Beata's name is derived from the Latin word for blessed or happy. I'm sure there's nothing significant to be found there. There is a panel that portrays this assault, if obscured. I simply choose not to include it. Her dream of marrying Zhenya and having a family are a thing of the past, and now wants to know what the elf visited for. He knows Oleg is behind this brothel, just one facet of his slave labor operation, and wants to put a stop to him without resorting to lethal means. He's in luck because the ever-traveling Oleg is due to be back in the Big Apple, and will make his customary stop at the brothel to sample the merchandise like he always does. Wagner must have given her some means of contact in between issues, a phone number or something, because he wants her to call him when Oleg arrives, and promises to find somewhere for her and the other women to stay, not wanting to abandon them. She passively agrees, and he makes an awkward and typically odorous exit. That's when there's a knock at the door. Oleg, whom Beata tells about her chat with the Blue Mutant, that she said what she was told to say, and nothing else. Good girl. Now I must throw baby panda into wood chipper. I'm not sure it is clear to readers that I am evil. Kurt didn't like leaving his contact there, but isn't so naive as to think he can just beat up some more goons and leave their victims on their own. When he was being hunted down in Germany, it was Professor X who saved his life by bringing him stateside. Otherwise, he could have been killed, put into a freak show, or even taken in by someone like Oleg. There are too many like that man, preying on the scared and desperate, playing on their hopes and exploiting them with lies. An amoral murderer, liar, and user of people that's also Russian? You can just hear Tucker Carlson running out to buy an engagement ring. He reminds himself to be thankful, despite how many may fear mutant kind, because he's blessed with loving friends, powers that let him evade harm with a thought, and is free to dedicate his life to help others, even if he's questioning the success of that endeavor. And he must remain focused, since actions have ramifications, like when he manages to accidentally knock over the trash cans as he returns to the church. This surprises Kim, who screams until Father Whitney takes her inside. You would think she'd never seen a blue man with a tail rooting through her garbage before. Let's just say those Blue Man Group performances got a little out of hand. As Kurt cleans up, he informs his mentor that he's close to finishing this smuggling ring. Sure, Kim's still crashing in the rectory, and those deaf people from the last issue are who knows where, but his contact in the Midtown brothel assures him the mastermind will be within reach soon. Whitney takes a swig of his flask, which is a bit concerning for the elf, but the Padre says he's just tired of dwindling attendance at his parish, with some Sunday morning patrons spending the rest of the week causing problems in the neighborhood. Then there's his pupil, telejumping around and busting heads. If he wants to help, he should stick to traditional charity work, giving out soup to the homeless and the like, leaving crime syndicates to others, whom Wagner clarifies are occupied with other priorities, from the feds to the Fantastic Four, leaving the ignored and vulnerable at risk of being lost. Way to give us some fun imagery we're not going to see, namely Ben Grimm busting down Oleg's door and declaring, "It's clobbering time!" before carrying him by the face to the nearest jail cell. Crawler feels obligated to use the gifts he's been given by the Almighty for the benefit of others, and while Whitney agrees, he reminds our hero that he isn't God. Ouch! My ego isn't that swelled, Father. At best, I thought I might be Santa Claus. The point is that while what he wants is good and a small bit of justice, stopping this ringleader isn't going to just end it all. There will be other traffickers, other victims, other people happy to see the Azure Acrobat fall in his bid to save humanity. Just something to think about before he becomes fully ordained. Kurt asks then, what's the point? And that's been an answer that Whitney's been looking for before his student was even born. He may not find it in his flask, but like Kurt, he's not going to let a lost cause stop him from trying. Maybe attendance isn't really down at the church, and Whitney is just so soused he just can't remember many of his congregants. We go to Chinatown, where Oleg is in a club meeting with another associate, one whom he previously muscled out of most of Manhattan, but now he's here to make it nice and sell their operations back to them, for not a lot of money, but he will need it by the next night. Oleg will need to lay off some people to clean up accounts, and wanted to let this mobster know, since some of the affected might be allies of his. My finances are all screwed up. Should never have hired Elon Musk as accountant. Worst decision I make. He won't rename my organization to Picture of Drunk Penguin in Underwear. Not as mascot or logo, as name. Back in Beata's room, she's on what's probably her 7th cigarette, psyching herself up to make that call to the ugly blue idiot who wants to help. Just pick up the phone, sound all panicked and frightened, and he should quickly arrive, just like Oleg said. And when he does come running, her owner will... well, what does she care? Just call. Yeah, he made an impassioned plea, but men have lied to her before. But his eyes were kind, his voice full of resolve, like he believed in what he was saying. And yet she knows what'll happen if she doesn't pick up that phone. A telemarketer will call just as she's settling in to White Lotus. Sure enough, the call is made, and Nightcrawler ran, jumped, and bamfed his way over after her frightened message, even though he doesn't really know where he's going to house these women after all this is done. Beata confirms Oleg has arrived, but Kurt is more concerned with her, if she's all right, which she says yes. He instructs her to tell the other girls to lock themselves in their rooms while he deals with Oleg, promising not to let him do something. It's not clear, since Kurt seems to jump on her concern with his confidence. She tries to tell him something, even calling him father, but it just leaves an awkward silence as Wagner makes his way through the house. Between that moment and the feeling that sound is outright missing from the place, our hero can tell things ain't quite right, but continues regardless. He can hear 10, maybe 15 men inside a nearby room, and when he ports inside, is horrified to see the other sex workers with bags over their heads, held at gunpoint by Oleg and his men. The elf complies with orders to not move, says the crook wins, and after using the Lord's name in vain, he shoots Wagner. Maybe because he started breakdancing all of a sudden. Oleg said not to make a move, and that includes busting a move. This is the exact pose Crawler used in his audition for one of the original ads for the iPod. His jacket's presumably bulletproof because he wakes up later, bleeding, just as Oleg is coordinating flying the women elsewhere and closing this house down. Kurt found them because Oleg wanted him to, thanks to Beata, and he leaves while one of his goons takes the mutant out back for execution. He repeats to himself that he failed and is going to die as the gun is aimed at the back of his head, but suddenly bursts free of his bonds, denying this death and pleading to the Lord to not let him fail, nor allow these evil men to continue, asking for the strength to make things right. He teleports into a nearby dwelling, stumbles down into the basement, and begins passing out from blood loss, begging God to not let him die yet. "I want to go out with a cyborg punching me through the sternum. It looks so cool." Issue 4's cover is a close-up of our star, looking about as somber as in the previous covers, but now a lot more pale. Looks like he caught some kind of bug and is going prematurely gray. There's a light mist around him, which is not the right color for his teleporting, so maybe he's somewhere really cold. Also, another giganto moon.
You throw another moon at me, and I'm gonna lose it.
We open in the early morning at St. Michael's, with Kim sneaking past a slumbering Father Whitney. He and his student were kind to take her in, and she's grateful, but knows eventually she'll be found out and sent back home to Thailand. She misses her family, so it doesn't seem so bad, but she worries about the shame of having nothing to show for her 2 years of work. So, before the sun rises, she takes off like a thief in the night. No, not a thief. A thief takes things. Well, she's taking her leave. Oh, come on, that was clever. Nightcrawler is still in that basement, too weak from his injuries, when he hears a familiar voice. "Come on, up and at 'em."
Up and at them!
Up and at 'em!
Up and at them!
It seems that Logan is there, joined by several others, responding to his narration as they help him up. Xavier, Captain Britain, and other silhouetted teammates from the X-Men and Excalibur stand before him, telling him that fighting on, even when things look hopeless, is what they do. Not just mutants, but heroes. Chuck even states the obvious, that they aren't really here, just hallucinations from all that red stuff he's lost. And while honored, Wagner was expecting to see someone else. "I'm sorry, Kurt, but as you know, Dwayne The Rock Johnson is a very busy man." It's clarified that they're all spontaneous sensory flashes because of his brain not getting enough blood, but the one he expected? Answering the elf's prayers, since he's not dead. Not dead serious about going to Itchy and Scratchy Land. He gets to his feet on a splash page, realizing he's still breathing, standing,
Praise him!
and possibly still bleeding, so careful there, dude. Returning to the brothel, he finds only Beata, who says she was left behind, though reveals her co-workers are being flown to Chicago, and that Oleg is looking for a Thai slave broker / travel agent. It's a real time saver when Oleg wants to procure more slaves, but also look into a good vacation spot when he takes a few weeks off. Crawler wants to know why he should believe her, if that story about Zhenya was all a lie to plan his pity. He wants to understand why she betrayed him when all he wanted to do was help, to save all of Oleg's slaves. And Beata finally turns to meet him face to face, with a black eye and blood on her chin, beaten by her boss. A surprised Kurt promises to stop the trafficker, but she tells him to back off, doesn't need his help, and just to leave her alone. So he does. On the next page, narration gives us some backstory on Oleg as he drives through the city. After the USSR dissolved, he profited in the lawless environment that resulted. No regulations or rules, and easily bought off cops in what the crook termed the Wild East. His military service made him strong enough to survive, but after the government started to stabilize, he wanted what others like him wanted, to hop to the US and live the American dream, make lots of money giving people the thing they want most, and kill anything that threatens you. Something might have been lost in the translation. Though not enough for Oleg to demand a refund from Babel. As he pulls into a plaza, narration points out he wasn't angry over his trials, since he doesn't mind doing what's necessary to not just survive, but thrive. And if that means leaving New York, as it was making him so much money, so be it. At the church, Whitney has followed a spotty red trail to find his pupil. "Just once, Kurt, I'd like you to mess up the rectory with some substance other than some unlucky mugger's blood." The elf really went off the handle during that confessional part of his training. He clarifies it's his own blood this time, but fortunately has experience treating his own wounds. He's told about Kim leaving, likely out of fear of deportation, and blames himself for not doing something. But the Padre says he did what he could, and that the young woman ultimately made her own call. Whitney tries to keep him from going out again, that dying won't accomplish anything, and Kurt snaps back, saying he doesn't need his follies pointed out to him.
So all people are flawed and all struggle with a capacity for sin. None likes to be reminded of our shared human weakness.
He knows it appears silly, and that not many dreams are more unrealistic or doomed to fail than Charles Xavier's dream of human-mutant harmony, but few are dearer to his heart. It goes mutant acceptance, being cast as Superman in a big-budget movie without makeup or CGI, and being a successful comic book reviewer on YouTube, in that order. He knows firsthand how bad things are in the world, that trying to make it better is hopeless, but as he teleports away, he declares it won't stop him, because he has faith. He next shows up with his image inducer on, at Mrs. M. Soon's home again, while she's in the middle of fretting over her gardener. Whether or not he's another slave, who knows? Kurt makes it clear he doesn't want to play games, demanding to know where the rich lady got Kim, who put her in contact with the traffickers. She'll help, if she gets immunity. She's out of luck since Wagner isn't law enforcement, but he assures that she'll answer for her mistakes, maybe in this life, and certainly in the next. Soon won't be able to bargain or barter with God, so insists she fork over the information he needs to find the head of the slave trade for nothing in return, simply because it's the right thing to do.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
In the plaza, the Thai travel agent mentioned earlier is locking the door to his business for the night, when Oleg surprises him. The Russian is closing up shop too, leaving the Big Apple, but when he goes, so do his associates as he grabs the man's neck, either to throttle or snap. Is just good business. Also saves so much money by not having to buy pricey retirement watches for people. I don't think he succeeds because Nightcrawler shows up and kicks him through the door, though we don't see the would-be victim again, so maybe he ran off. Oleg draws his gun and tries to find his opponent in the darkness, asking why the monster is pestering him like this. He's just looking to make a buck, learning from American capitalism, giving non-U.S. citizens a path to the country, making deals. But the elf isn't having more cruel rationalizations for his wicked methods. Offended that his acts of murder, exploitation, abuse, and slavery are considered wrong, Oleg empties a clip, then asks what his opponent knows about it, just before getting kneed into a wall for ruining people's lives. Oleg, why can't you be more like your brother O-Arm? You've disappointed your father O-Torso. Losing his target again, the scumbag laughs, claiming his victims love him for offering what they wanted most. They knew what they were getting into, and weren't so thrilled with the lives they had before. So who is the mutant actually helping? Well, he's helping me, giving the smackdown on a thug that isn't as powerful as he thinks. Certainly improves my mood, I can tell you that. Kurt actually growls as he pounces on the guy, a sign he's seriously losing his patience, only for the villain to throw him off. When he teleports away before hitting a wall, Oleg runs outside, where the priest in training answers his question, that he'll help whomever he can. Dropping from a lamppost and taking away his gun, the elf delivers a series of strikes, telling Oleg that he'll never hurt anyone again. He doesn't lose control this time, eventually stopping and saying he has no intention on killing the slaver. And the villain laughs, not because the blood from his nose somehow disappears in the next panel, but because he says the U.S. doesn't have laws against human trafficking. I checked. What about murder, attempted murder, like in the last several pages, operating unlicensed businesses, labor laws? Happen to check any of them? Now, I did a little research, and while this is technically inaccurate, it's kind of an understandable mistake. This was published in 2002, and in 2000, Congress passed the Trafficking Victims Protection Act in order to combat, well, human trafficking. However, before then, as far as I found, there was technically no federal law that explicitly made this illegal. Not that I spent weeks researching or anything, but the only other action I could find was an executive order to increase efforts to fight it, written by then President Clinton.
That's not Clinton. That's just one of your mechanical hillbilly bears.
Yeah, but so far nobody's noticed.
Who knew I'd find another use for one of those clips after the Prime Captain America crossover? Anywho, I suppose this was just an oversight on the writer's part that didn't get corrected when this came to print. Whoops. However, much like how I snarkily mentioned a moment ago, Wagner points out his other crimes, like prostitution, torture, and sexual assault. Oleg laughs again, realizing he's talking about Beata, but figures he'll get 3 years tops. And even in that case, he's essentially a nobody. His arrest won't put a stop to the slave trade. There'll be others to do the dirty work. Kurt says he'll stop them too, which Oleg calls pointless, But our hero simply says it isn't. The police arrives as the scumbag says the monster would make a terrible businessman, and that he'll see him soon. More likely a jab at how light his sentence will probably be than some kind of oath of revenge. Or he thinks Kurt will visit him in prison for spiritual counseling, which would be in keeping with the guy's faith, but you can imagine our boy's going to need some time to process all this first. We get an epilogue set some weeks later. With his inducer on, Kurt walks the streets, looking around and wondering if he'll see Kim again, and reflecting on Father Whitney's words, that she made her choice and he should let her go. A sentiment he repeated several times since. Though unspoken, his mentor also seemed unsure about him becoming a priest, as it doesn't seem to fit well with his superheroics. Oh, come on, it was common for parishes to teach boxing classes as community outreach. This is the same principle, only instead of sparring with another boxer, it's punching supervillains and alien bandits. A woman calls him, one with cross earrings, and propositions him. Not like this would be her first holy man client, but he politely declines and carries on, until Kurt stops, turns back, and offers a $100 bill. No catch, no horizontal mambo, nothing weird in return, just to accept it and head on home. She is skeptical, wondering if the money is real or if this is some kind of setup, since everyone wants something, but he insists that just isn't the case. Not believing him, she releases the money into the wind, telling him to get lost. As he leaves, Wagner admits he did want something. A really good French bread pizza. In hindsight, he could have used the hundo for that one. What he wants is to help, for the very selfish reason that he believes that everyone can change their lives for the better, no matter how bad things get, regardless of our many failures, mistakes, and sins. We just need the opportunity to arrive, and the strength to take it. Sometimes we need more than one chance, and he doesn't feel he can give up. The bill has glided to a homeless man on a stoop, as Nightcrawler narrates how maybe 1 out of 100 good deeds may make a difference, but there are still times when things fit, and we can be saved. And the comic ends on that bearded stranger using that money to rent a room for the night. That was Marvel Icon's Nightcrawler, and I think it's pretty good. It doesn't shy away from the superhero action, and while definitely having a Christian angle, it manages to avoid feeling preachy. Religious characters in fiction can be tricky to portray. Even in the best of circumstances, there are worries of alienating people of other faiths, of no faith, or even the faith you're trying to represent. Even so, it can still make these made-up people we watch or read seem more relatable. Some stories settle for the occasional scene at a house of worship, someone mentioning their belief system once or twice, or jewelry to denote some denominational connection. I don't expect everyone to be perfect or anything, but it sometimes baffles me why some media have characters wear a cross necklace or something, and that being it for their supposed belief, when certain actions they take run counter to Christ's teachings in some fashion. I'm sure some writers do it to show some complexity of a single person, or as commentary that some treat their faith as frivolous decoration, which unfortunately happens in real life. Fortunately, that's not the case with our man Kurt. He isn't written as some irrational clod who beats people over the head with the Bible, or trying to baptize them by pelting balloons filled with holy water. Nor is he perfectly assured, flawless, or possessing all the answers. He goes through a lot of internal struggle and physical pain to do what he feels is right and just, what he feels called to do. His conversations with Whitney are more personal than throwing scripture back and forth like a really boring rap battle. They know they can't just light a candle, say a quick prayer, and that's the end of the story. Action has to be taken, but since Crawler jumped into this thing head first without looking, he wasn't exactly prepared and didn't always know what to do, despite his best intentions. Even when he knew there'd be something to take care of if he succeeded, he was often too focused or overwhelmed by the present to plan for the future. A bit reckless and haphazard perhaps, but could also be part of his belief that regardless of whether or not he can actively see people's lives getting better with his involvement, things will work out somehow. A lot of religious media tends to make the mistake of looking down on others with an undeserved sense of superiority, whether or not they're of the same faith, really focusing on other people's splinters while ignoring the wooden planks in their own eyes. Kurt never condemns anyone. Sure, he does knock some heads, but he doesn't threaten hellfire or think Oleg's going to be converted by a sermon.
D. Damnation. E. Eternal damnation.
He actually considers that maybe Beata is okay with her life as a sex worker, because, yeah, plenty do it of their own free will, like it or not, And when encountering people of a foreign land, he does what Christ taught, to help them because he too was once a stranger. Because they are lost and ignored and vulnerable. He doesn't go around bragging about being a Christian or cry that he's somehow a victim. He lets his actions speak without looking for accolades. Kind of easy when your blue fur blends so well into the shadows. Father Whitney doesn't get much development aside from being a beleaguered mentor. He's willing to help as well, but states problems with attendance and some parishioners causing mayhem in town, while there's little he can do to stop it. He seems like he might have a mild alcohol dependency, not getting full-on drunk, but this could be something for him to struggle with, if a writer was so inclined, but this is Kurt's story.
The studio couldn't afford another X-Man.
While the story definitely dealt with his faith, juxtaposed to him also being an X-Man, it doesn't much address the precarious situation that could be created if he enters the priesthood. It's kind of mentioned at the end, but nothing to insist that he couldn't do both if he wanted, either helping in a mission to save some mutants from a new Sentinel attack, or even use his powers as part of the clergy to help out the neighborhood. The violence he finds himself engaging in could be a problem, but the details aren't exactly clarified on that. Kurt isn't overly rambunctious or playful as I recall seeing him in some earlier books, but he maintains a sense of humor, with a lot of funny quips and one-liners, so he isn't a complete downer. The covers often show him being very serious or maudlin, which I guess was for drama's sake, hoping that might sell some books, but he does smile, like when Beata calls him father just before he walks into a trap. Maybe it's because he's just a warm, kind-hearted person, but since he didn't correct her like he had with others prior, I wonder if he just liked hearing it, like an acknowledgement of the role he was seeking, confirmation that he was doing the right thing. Yet he isn't above losing his temper when dealing with a man like Oleg, who rationalizes himself as a businessman, frequently using corporate jargon like hostile takeover or merger, not necessarily as code in case he's being spied on, but because he genuinely sees himself as a successful CEO type, that eliminating who he sees as a liability and treating life as disposable products if it fails to benefit him is all in a day's work. He views people as commodities purely for his own benefit. Okay, so he might have some stuff in common with actual businessmen. It's suggested he sexually assaulted Beata at some point, but I'm wondering if that was before the brothel emptied, or if he was that friend that assaulted her in Russia and forced her into this life. The latter would fit, but it's not specified. And it could have also have been both. We don't get much else on Oleg, just that he's a former soldier, which makes sense if he's going to get into a dust-up with a superhero, but he doesn't really do that much actual fighting. When not using a gun, his physical prowess is mostly displayed when he takes out some underlings. His skills don't really show up that much when Nightcrawler confronts him. There were times when dialogue seemed to repeat, like when Kurt sums up what Ted, the lead goon in the Death Slave House, said, after we just read him saying it.
It's my job to be repetitive. My job. My job. Repetitiveness is my job.
Maybe if his dialogue bubbles were swapped with captions of Kurt summarizing, paraphrasing, or even quoting him, it'd feel less redundant. And it did feel a little weird that Wolverine gets name-dropped as Wagner points out the obvious about having no super senses. Or maybe Marvel was hoping that Wolvie was such marketing gold that just mentioning his name would help sell books. There were times when a character would arrive at an accurate conclusion without seeming to have all the data they would need for it. Some work as educated guesses, like Kim being a slave, but other times, like M soon knowing where Kim is hiding, felt more lucky than educated. The art had some inconsistencies, like the elf's jacket in between panels when he was talking to this businesswoman, or not always showing the blood that's supposed to be on his hands or Oleg's face, but it's still really good. It's almost like a variation of Bruce Timm's style, which may be why Father Whitney looks a lot like old Bruce from Batman Beyond. And Oleg does too sometimes.
Shut up and drive.
It used shadows really nicely for quiet moments, and the glowing effect of Nightcrawler's eyes was excellent. Though there were a lot of shadows, so much so they got Rodney Ramos to do more inks in issue 4, and maybe some readers wouldn't be very into it. Also, I'm wondering if the guy at the end was intentionally designed with certain depictions of God in mind, but I could just be thinking that because of his beard. If it's intentional, that it's more a visual reference and not supposed to be God, then it actually works with what Jesus said, "Whatsoever you do for the least of my brothers and sisters, you do for me."
Our ability to understand God's purpose is limited, but we take comfort in the fact that His love is limitless.
This miniseries gave a modest spotlight on a devout X-Man's personal faith that felt respectful and compelling when dealing with a problem bigger than one man. It neither tried to convert anyone nor felt like lip service. Anyone not interested in the religious element may not dig it, but if you're a fan of Nightcrawler, it may be up your alley. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.